But, David, is this a case of he should have resigned sooner, or is it just a trial by media and he's been pushed out?
I don't think he should have resigned sooner. I think we have, over the past few years, become rather too hasty to say that people should jump before they're pushed. There is a very fundamental point of British law that you are innocent until you are proved guilty. And everybody is entitled to this. Everybody. Politicians, people in the media, sportsmen, the men on the street. And I don't think it's fair to say that just because Mr. Zahawi was under suspicion of wrongdoing, he should have plunged the knife into his own heart before Sir Laurie's report found that he had committed breaches of the ministerial code. Is it fair, just because he's in the public eye, as it were, and just because he holds a position of responsibility, for him to be held to higher standards than us? I think, yes, he has chosen to pursue this vocation. But is it equally fair that he should be given the benefit of the doubt until he has been proved wrong? I think yes.
But, David, that's an argument to be made for him not being sacked earlier. But surely, if he doesn't need to wait for the investigation to be over for him to know that he was guilty of breaking the code, surely he should have resigned earlier.
Well, I think there is a question, if you read this report, into whether he considered himself to be guilty at this point. He has been found guilty by this report, by this investigation, but I think it's an entirely possible thing that Mr. Zahawi believed himself not to have committed breaches of the relevant sections of the ministerial code until it was told that he was. And is it fair for him to be held to an impossibly high standard? No, I don't think it is.
Absolutely.
And I think this is why we end up with people in public life who are either totally anodyne and have nothing to offer, or, frankly, the people in public life who are just so bland and boring that they cannot rise to the occasion. We need people who have ability. We need people who are willing at times to push the envelope a little far. Would we have a Churchill in public life if in the 1920s and 30s people's tax and people's income had been investigated to the degree now? No, I don't think we would. So we have to ask a question to the nation. Do you want people who are capable and who at times take the action that they believe is right regarding their own taxation, or do we just want people who stick to the exact letter of public moral opprobrium about no tax avoidance?
You're arguing in good faith and giving him a lot of benefit of the doubt there. Nigel, Nazim Zahawi still doesn't seem to have taken responsibility. He still doesn't seem to think he's guilty, and he seems to be pushing the blame onto the press. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, it was because of the press and the constant scrutiny that he was under that he's actually gone now. So the press has been doing a good job on that. I mean, what Nadeem Zahawi is complaining about is headlines like the noose tightening. Now, I'm sure the sub-editor who wrote that will be reflecting on the appropriateness of language like that. But it was meant as a metaphor. We use such things in everyday speech, like teetering on a cliff edge, coming down on someone like a ton of bricks. None of these things are meant literally. And Nadeem Zahawi spent an awful lot of his time threatening journalists with libel lawyers to try and hush the whole thing up. And I think David's point about whether or not someone is innocent until proven guilty, here was a man who was in charge of everybody's taxes, who knew he was under investigation by HMRC. As far as we can see, he accepts that he owed some back tax and accepted a penalty for that. Surely he must have realized that his position it had to be exactly within the letter of the rules. It's not a matter of, oh, we can bend this, we can bend that. That's the problem that the Tories constantly face, and get this accusation of one law for them, one for the rest of us.
I mean, it's an interesting point, David. The fact you mentioned should politicians be held to a higher standard, but this is someone who was ultimately responsible for all of us paying our tax, and he wasn't paying his fair share of tax. So there's a level of hypocrisy there that is important to recognise, isn't there? But also, we're talking about millions of pounds. We're not talking about a few thousand pounds. We're talking about millions of pounds.
Yes, we are, because Nadeem Zahawi is an exceptionally successful man of the sort that we should be encouraging more in this nation to be. Let us remember that tax avoidance is not a criminal offence. Tax evasion is absolutely, and should be punished with the full force of the law. But to avoid paying your tax is in fact enshrined in statute law from a judgment of 1933 as every Englishman's right and duty. You can look it up on Google afterwards for those of you who doubt me. But I think, yes, there is an element of hypocrisy here in Nadeem Zahawi being under investigation himself while being responsible for others paying their taxes, and perhaps on that basis he ought to have resigned. But I think that we have swung so far over the recent years into the idea of there's no smoke without fire and that you should jump before you push. Look at the Conor Burns case, a man accused of sexual assault who, in fact, had done nothing at all and yet was jumped upon by the press and by the upper echelons of the Tory party and kicked out. I think we have to take a step back and stop being so hysterical about things. Nadeem Zahawi was wrong. He has now admitted he was wrong. He was fired for being wrong. And I think it's perfectly clear to everybody that he will not be returning to government for a very long time, if at all. Justice has been done.
Okay.
The penalty has been served now.
Okay.
And what's been lost here?
Nigel.